new on Curiosity Stream.
I'm James Burke. I'm going to take you on a journey through time.
James Burke's visionary series returns, reimagined for our time.
Now, this is all uncharted territory.
The Washington Post hails Burke as one of the most intriguing minds in the Western world. The New York Times raves he careens from one great moment in history to another.
Where do we want to go from here?
Experience all new connections.
So what's the next connection?
With monthly, annual, and bundled plans, find the one that works for you at curiositystream.com.
Did you miss your deadline to renew your Medicaid coverage? You can still send your completed annual review form to Healthy Connections Medicaid. You may be assigned to another health plan, but you can ask to come back to First Choice within 60 days of renewed Medicaid eligibility. It's your family. It's your choice. First Choice is the right choice. Renew and choose us. Visit selecthealthofsc.com/renew to learn more.
It's the Pop Culture Field Manual.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Pop Culture Field Manual podcast, sitting right at that intersection of weapons, action, the military, and, of course, pop culture. My name is Cameron Fath, and with me, as always, in case you're joining us for the first time,
Israel Wright. It's great to be back with you folks, and also joining us, not for the first time, for the multipleth time. I just made up a word. Chris, Magic Voice Chris.
Hi, how's it going, everyone?
Good, man. It's good to hear you and see you.
I'm just gonna sit in the corner and skulk.
Skulk. Define skulk.
Skulking, like, oh man, I suck at this. I'm good at knowing how to use words, but not defining them.
The skulking.
Sure. Welcome to my life. I use words that I don't know what they mean all the time.
It's like sulking, but in a corner.
Hold on. There's something. You've been saying it wrong for so long. I just want to point it out to you. You say Banksy when you're talking about... It's Banksy.
Banksy?
Like Banksy, Banksy.
Oh, really?
And you say Banksy. You mentioned
Banksy.
On the latest podcast, because you always bring up that you die twice thing. And you say Banksy. And every time I'm like,
Banksy. Okay, well, I'm glad you are exposing us on the air and not in private.
This is a deep dive into Cameron's
We're growing.
grammar.
This is how we grow.
This is how we grow, just
folks.
Exposing, airing our dirty laundry in front of thousands of people.
Are going to call you out.
Yeah, exactly. True. Accomplices, they'll correct you in private, but true friends correct you in front of everybody.
That's what Banksy said. Okay.
That's what Banksy said, apparently. But you know what Banksy doesn't do, now that I'm saying it right? He doesn't take deep dives. And that's exactly what we're going to do today. Yep, Izzy, Chris, and I have accumulated a lot of information on 3 specific, whether it be games, movie scenes, or movies in general. And we're going to take the time to really take that deep dive into them and just take them apart like an onion, layer for layer. So... Yeah. I'm pretty excited about this just because, we've all seen these movies. We've talked about a lot of these games, but what we don't know is like the nitty-gritty that goes on in them. So I'm excited to learn a little bit more than I did before. And Izzy, I know you have a very, very good one here.
Yes, this one has a great story behind it because back when Cameron and I were first starting our Gameology series 80 videos ago, we did one on Spec Ops: The Line. We watched gameplay footage from Spec Ops: The Line, which is a third-person shooter, military shooter from 2012. And the footage was pretty lackluster, right? The gameplay itself in this game is not all that spectacular, But we saw some footage. I remember we saw some footage of a bunch of dudes in chairs, and the main characters come up, and they're all burned with white phosphorus. And like, you even had this story like, oh man, if I saw some dudes that got killed by some of my guys got killed, that would just enrage me. And, and then boy, we just got destroyed in the comments because
You're putting it very nicely. This was the worst video we have ever made.
It's the worst video we've ever made.
It was a abomination of all abominations. People destroyed us in the comment section. They did.
We built some character that day. We learned how to we got some thicker skin. on that particular video because the game Spec Ops: The Line is really unique in the history of military shooters. There's a lot of story that goes into the development, and there's a lot of layers in the story and
Like
the
an onion.
themes that it explores, just like an ogre. Actually, ogres have layers too.
Yeah, just like onions.
But yeah, and so ever since then, and the story goes on. Actually, I meant to do a video of my own later on like my own YouTube channel. And I even had you over. I captured the gameplay footage. I played through the entire game, and then I had you over to record some audio, and it just never materialized. It just never.
Yeah, it was
that
a whole
footage is
thing
sitting
too.
on my
I'm
computer
surprised you
to this
didn't.
day.
I'm surprised you did not follow through with it because it was a whole thing.
It was
like
a
we did
whole
multiple
deal.
viewings. I'm
Yeah,
pretty sure I
multiple
came over at
viewings.
least 2 or 3 times to watch that
Yeah.
gameplay. So
Yeah.
thanks for wasting my time, by the way.
You didn't let him play, Izzy? Or you were just,
No,
he was just commenting on the gameplay?
I was
He didn't
commenting
even
on
give me
my
a day
gameplay
rate,
footage,
Chris.
and we didn't. Not only did we not get to finish the video, but the really pivotal footage, which kind of explains and cracks open the whole theme of the game and the story of the main character Walker. We didn't even get to that. We didn't even get to the final couple of chapters. So for those of you that are unfamiliar, Spec Ops: The Line came out 2012, and the basic story is that Dubai has been overrun with this massive freak sandstorm of biblical proportions. It's completely cut off from the outside world, and a battalion of soldiers led by General Conrad go in the Fighting 33rd, where he leads his men in there. And his intention is to save them, and eventually, worldwide opinion shifts, and the resources are no longer there. But then he just decides to stay, and he's going to be the one that's going to get them out, right? He's going to evacuate the civilians. Well, that's 6 months ago. Everybody loses contact with him, and Walker, who's a part of kind of a 3-man Delta Force style squad, is sent in to find out what happened, find survivors if there are any, and then call for backup. So pretty basic story on its face, but what the game ends up being is kind of an exploration into, I think most accurately described as the heart of darkness, right? Exploration into who we are as people and how we are all capable of heinous and evil deeds. And really the big thing that hit me was what happens when you deal, or how you deal with guilt, and whether or not what happens to you if you don't, how that can eat you up inside. Because as the game progresses, things get weirder and weirder. You start noticing weird things if you're paying attention to the game, where, say for example, General Conrad, you see him on billboards for advertisements for the city, and then you'll look at something, say there's a bunch of light posts lined up along the freeway, and then you turn around, you turn back around, and there's a bunch of hanging bodies from. So everything's not quite right off the bat, And at one point, there's kind of the pivotal point in the game where you are using a mortar and firing white phosphorus on the enemy. You actually end up fighting the Fighting 33rd. You end up fighting your own American troops, and turns out that you think that they were, corralling the civilians to kill them, but it turns out they were trying to save them. And then the CIA is there, and they get everything all messed up and destroy a big water supply, so everybody's going to die. But you, on this one level, you're firing a bunch of mortar shells with white phosphorus on the enemy. And at the very end, you walk through, you kind of get to see the devastation. Everybody's burned alive and charred. It's very graphic. And you go into this one canal, and you see there's a bunch of civilians, and they're all dead. They have all been burned as a result of your actions. And all the whole time you have this radio with Conrad, and he's kind of mocking you or trying to rationalize with you or philosophize the whole time, and you're making your way through. And it just keeps going and descending and descending. Finally, you get to the end of the game, and you get to the top of this big tower in Dubai, and you go to the top floor, and Conrad's there, but it turns out that he's dead. He's sitting in a chair. He's apparently blown his brains out. And then you start hallucinating all this stuff, this conversation with Conrad, where everything is revealed that, the civilians that you saw, all these things that are played out in the game, are actually Walker trying to deal with this traumatic experience that he has been alluding to in the past, where he has actually killed civilians in a previous engagement in Afghanistan years earlier. And he is just not able to he's not able to deal with it, and at the very end, you get to have a choice where you either take responsibility for what you've done and you blow your brains out, or you kind of don't take responsibility. You put it all on Conrad, you blame it on somebody and something else, and you shoot Conrad and he disappears, and you're just kind of left there. And there's a couple different endings for the game, so I guess I won't give everything away, but I think what captured, or what got me so what got me into the game, or what the reason why I wanted to do a deep dive on it was all the hints along the way that tell you that nothing is quite right, that these things are all kind of happening in your head. In fact, in the very beginning, there's a scene where you are in a helicopter chase and you are firing at the enemy, and then one of their helicopters veers off course and rams into you, and it is insinuated that basically, if you're paying attention, that is when the moment when Walker actually dies. And it goes back, it says earlier, and it jumps back to the beginning of the game, and the first kind of 12 chapters of the game is Walker kind of reliving the events that led up to that helicopter scene, and then everything after the helicopter scene, kind of the last couple of chapters, is Walker literally in his own private hell. Because that's when everything starts getting really off the rails. He starts hallucinating. He starts seeing his own men that have died coming back to life. He's shooting mannequins that look like enemies, and they're just mannequins. So, it was something that if you go back, and the replay value is very high, if you go back and you notice these things, you'll find out that this game is not your typical military action shooter. A lot of action shooters, military-based action shooters, Call of Duty and stuff, there's no ambiguity about who the bad guys are and who the good guys are. There might be a couple morally ambiguous questions, but they're not really the heart of the story. Well, that is kind of the heart of this story in Spec Ops: The Line, where you are not given very many good choices. You're kind of given the choice between the bad choice and the worst choice. There's that kind of an inevitability to everything that you're doing, and the characters at certain times even comment on it, kind of a meta commentary. And anyway, so that's kind of the overarching kind of deal with the game itself, and it's just interesting because this game I don't think at the time got a lot of hype or a lot of press, but it has since been remembered. And I watched a couple of commentary and videos on the themes and the Heart of Darkness and things like that. That it's definitely been remembered. Who knows if Call of Duty Black Ops 3 will be remembered 20 years from now. But it's been a while since Spec Ops: The Line has been released, and while the gameplay itself is not all that spectacular, the themes that it explores, and it really does kind of present them to you, it does a good job, I think, of pulling the player in and making them feel the kind of negative feels as the characters progress, where you're doing these things that are not right, or at least not the best actions to take, but you can't progress in the game without doing them, so there's this kind of thing where it kind of pulls you into making the bad choice. I've talked about Occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge before, that story where all the events are basically taking place in the character's mind at the moment of his death. This story is kind of like that. And what's great about it is, like any good mystery, all of the hints are there for the player to see if you're paying attention. So for example, whenever there is a transition, if it's a fade to black, it's a regular transition, but if it's a fade to white, it's Walker hallucinating it in his head. And the game kind of jumps back and shows you certain scenarios that you go through that make sense if you had that kind of point of view kind of going out, so.
Izzy, you do a really good job of explaining this game, because to the first experience that we had on it, and that was the Gameology experience, the game's seemingly nothing special. The gameplay's not that great. It's in third person. Yep. Everything that we looked for as far as like what we were typically reacting to through Gameology was, military accuracy, use of tactics, equipment, weapons, all that jazz. And the game does not do it justice. But then, you go into this deep dive as what you just did, and you realize that there is so much more to it. And, all the people that reacted so negatively to that video were extremely justified. And to me, it would almost help this, this game, just because the story is so good, if they would just make it into an animated series instead of a video game, I could appreciate it much more. Because, as a gamer, you're looking for the entertainment value. That's why we play these video games, right?
Mm-hmm.
At least in my opinion, initially, I want to be entertained. And it's hard to be entertained when you're hit with such dark themes, So to me, if this was available as an animated series or an animated movie, it would be absolutely phenomenal. But yeah, the dealing with the struggles of, killing your own men, and then the descent into madness, which is totally Apocalypse Now vibes. And you get a lot of, reoccurring themes, and you get a lot of subtle hints through it. And it's crazy the fact that you're if it fades to black, it's normal, but if it fades to white, it's a hallucination. Those are all motifs that I did not pick up unless you explained them to me. So, I mean, the game itself is a work of art, but you need to take the time to truly understand it. Which I'm glad you took the time and explained it to me, because I wouldn't take the time. But, but yeah, no, I'm glad you picked this one, just because, it has a lot of value to it. And, most shooter games nowadays are, you're killing the bad guy, you're using state-of-the-art equipment, you're having fun doing it. But this is as far as you can get away from that. This actually has something to take away, minus the entertainment value.
I think what's interesting, and I get it's kind of unconscious, but looking at our list, I think all the things we picked kind of touch on moral ambiguity because there's certainly that aspect in the thing I'm going to talk about. But I think it's interesting also, a lot of video games, it is just black and white. It's, these are the good guys, these are the bad guys. And it's interesting to explore because nothing in life is actually that cut and dried. Even when you feel like you're in the most righteous position, there's still ambiguity there. There's complexity. I like what you put here, that you become more interested in finding out the whole truth, whether about a person, event, or idea, knowing everything about a thing. And you can still decide that what happened was just, or it was right. But, it's you talk about our history as Americans. America has kind of a clouded history because while I still feel like I'm very patriotic, I still accept that, the road to get here is not paved in gold. So,
right.
And I feel
paved
that's
in fucking blood.
That's right, paved in bodies.
I mean, everything that's happened in history is there's no
right, and there's a larger context too within which the events of the United States take place as well. It's the unfortunate story, I think, of mankind, and that's this game and other things that have happened to be more recently. A game can come along, or a movie or a book can come along at a certain time in your life, whereas 10 years earlier it wouldn't have spoken to you, but all of a sudden at this point in your life you're kind of open to the experience of it. And so being able to find out the whole truth of anything is very difficult. It's worth it. Like you said, you could still come around to the same conclusion, but it will be buttressed and held up by a firmer foundation of more information and a better perspective.
Yeah, better to know everything than just have blind faith in something.
Right.
As far as historical events go. So, but I mean, I played this game a little bit with my friends when it came out, and I was just, I didn't remember how it ended. I remembered it being based on Heart of Darkness, but until you brought up how it ended, I was like, oh yeah. But I just remember it being very trippy and weird things happening throughout, and thinking that maybe the guy's a little crazy.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, and hats off to Nolan North. He's a voice actor who, if you're into video games at all or animated stuff, he's done it all. He's been around forever. He's like Troy Baker. He's one of the greats. The voice of the main character, Nathan Drake from Uncharted series, he did the voice of Walker in this one, and it really does. He really does a good job. Bruce Boxleitner, a la Tron or Babylon 5, plays General Conrad, and he gives a great performance too. So it does a good job of pulling you in. So for those who are into a very different playing experience, I would say entertaining, but also a bit a bit difficult. Like it's maybe a little bit of in the family of The Last of Us 2. Not exactly the funnest experience, but an experience that is worth it, especially in the military shooter genre. I would definitely recommend Spec Ops: The Line.
Worthwhile, but not a barrel of laughs.
Yeah, not a barrel of monkeys.
Don't play the game expecting to get a bunch of laughs and smiles through it and a bunch of hey, that was cool. You're not gonna get that.
High fives all around.
Yeah, high fives.
But
all
I feel
around.
like that's more like prevalent now. Like people play because there's just a lot of good stories in video games, and people play video games for a good story. And yes, the gameplay is important, but it doesn't have to be all giggles. I mean, even The Last of Us, which anyone that's been watching the series, the way it starts, I'm like, it's a gut punch from the word go. It's not like a happy story.
Yeah, no, I think, video games have matured as people have matured. The game players and the game developers have gotten older, and so they're telling their stories now and their points of view, whether it's social or humanitarian, a human story or a political kind of it's all in there. It's all in there if they're good, if they're worth their salt. And, and there's still a bunch of great, just purely entertaining games out there. But I mean, for those that are into more of a deeper experience, those games are out there too.
Absolutely.
Spec Up the Lines is a great one.
Yeah. So that's it, guys. That's my deep dive into Spec Ops: The Line.
All right.
Very nice. Yeah, very nice. Chris, what do you have, my friend?
So
you have a great one.
Yeah. Well, so we've mentioned Saving Private Ryan a ton on this podcast, but I wanted to focus just on the Omaha Beach scene because it's it's generally regarded as the most accurate depiction of combat, to the point where the where is it here? I gotta find it. I found all these little factoids and I was like, geez Louise. The Department of Veteran Affairs, when the movie came out, they created a phone line dedicated for viewers who were affected by the film. And there was actually an increase in veterans visiting counselors for post-traumatic stress disorder after the movie came out because it was so realistic. And
what a bunch of weenies.
I knew you were going to say that after your fireworks diatribe. But I mean, so I just wanted to focus on this one scene, just the way it was shot and kind of like what they wanted to get out of it. Because everyone thinks that this is the opening of the movie. But if you go back and watch the movie, it doesn't open with them on Omaha Beach or about to attack the beach. It opens with an old man in a cemetery. And that's the actual opening of the movie. But then it transitions straight to this scene. And so the scene, it took 3 to 4 weeks to film it, and it cost $12 million just for this one scene. Now, albeit it's like 30 minutes long. It involved 1,500 people, including 400 crew, 1,000, I'll make sure I say this right, God. Forza Cosanta. They were being the soldiers and also Irish Army members, and then dozens of extras. They had 30 amputees and paraplegics fitted with prosthetic limbs to portray the disfigured soldiers. So there's that that realism there. And it's, like I said, it's often cited as the most realistic because they didn't pull any punches. Like they didn't soften anything. They didn't make it seem like there was any aspect of this that wasn't brutal. I think it's really interesting. There's no like big valorous acts in the storming of the beach. Like, yes, Jackson has his moment where he shoots out that nest, but there's no like heroic moment where someone does this thing. There's no like, albeit all the people, they're doing heroic acts constantly just by doing their jobs, but there's no like some grand gesture, which I thought was very interesting.
There's just soldiers doing soldiering,
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's probably also what kind of contributes to it seeming the most accurate depiction of combat. There's no big speech. There's no, someone like, I'm going to go do this. And then they go and do it. I mean, yes, there's lots of self-sacrifice throughout the history of war, and I'm sure that there were acts like that on Omaha Beach, but they didn't focus on it that way, that you're just seeing like how like gritty and real it was. And one of the ways that they did that was when they were shooting it, they only used handheld cameras, and they kept the cameras low to the ground so that you were seeing it from the perspective of maybe a soldier who was hiding for cover or someone that was trying to make their way up the beach, as opposed to like these big wide shots or, like a crane shot that's following people, so that it was less of like a voyeuristic thing. Like when you're watching it, you feel like you're in the battle, and that way it's more realistic to you. So I thought that was really cool that they were doing that.
I know, that's super cool.
And then this quote from Tom Hanks, he said the first day of shooting, he was in the back of the landing craft, and the ramp went down, and he saw the first 2 or 3 rows of guys, getting blown to bits and shot up like it starts in the movie. And he said in his head, of course, he knows it's fake, but like there was still this red mist going up in the air, and he wasn't prepared for how tactile it was. He said that the air literally went pink and noise was deafening, and there were bits and pieces of stuff falling on top of him, and it was horrifying. And so the fact that like he's in it, he's an actor, he knows it's fake, and he felt like overwhelmed by it just in the moment. To me, that's just, again, it just shows you like the detail that went into it, and just like I guess, is viscerality a word? How visceral everything was?
Visceral nature.
Viscerality. Oh.
Yeah, maybe I'll make that a word. The viscerality of it. And something else I found out, which I didn't realize, is they shot most of the movie in order. So from start to finish, they shot it mostly in order. So the first thing they shot was this Omaha Beach scene. And then as they went, as characters died, they actually had to like leave the set. So like when people died, they did go away. Yeah. They just kept filming in order. And so I'm sure some stuff was shot out of order, and there were probably reshoots and stuff like that. But it was like, when Vin Diesel's character dies, then Vin Diesel was off the movie and he was just gone. And then they probably felt that, which has nothing to do with this first scene. But well, none of them die in
but
the
it's a
first
great
scene.
example of how the film was made, of course.
Yeah. And so it's just really fascinating to me, all these choices they made. Dale Dye, who we've talked about before, he's in the movie at the very beginning, yeah? After Omaha
leader
Beach.
That, I think Tom Hanks gets his orders from, maybe.
He's either him or he's with General Marshall whenever they're like finding
Talking
out.
about it. Yeah.
Yeah. I know that one of them is Bryan Cranston, because I'm always like, but he was basically, so the extras were all divided into platoons with the designated leader, and Dale Dye had like 4 different radio channels, and he was basically telling them what to do. Like it was all choreographed and it was very specific, but Steven Spielberg didn't storyboard it. There was like some amount of improvisation also. So like Dale Dye was sitting there telling them, okay, now you go do this. Like it wasn't as scripted, I guess, as you would think it would be. And I think that's also what kind of lends itself to the realness of it, or you understand.
No, it's a great point, because I mean, like in a combat situation, a plan never goes according to plan.
Yeah.
So just like you're given these, I want to say rules, but you're given these guidelines, which are in the form of battle drills of how to deal with situations, right? But a perfectly executed battle drill has never like happened. It's not as simple as the training manuals make it look.
Yeah.
There's always that level of just, randomness and just pure on creativity that goes into it. So I think the fact that he just gave him general ideas to go off of, and then they execute that way, that was the most perfect thing they could have done in order to make that that landing scene look as real as possible. So I mean, I had no idea that ever occurred. I thought, just being on a high profile movie, like when I was on Tenet, like every second of it was like choreographed and whatnot and all that jazz. But the fact that they're just like, hey, do this, that's that's super cool.
Well, I mean, there was still there was choreography and it was rehearsed, but it wasn't to the degree that you would, I think, expect. It wasn't like Tom Hanks is going to step here in this mud hole, and then he's going to go left around this barricade, and then he's going to go up this, and then he's going to call for the was it the Bangaliers?
Bangalores.
That's what it is. Yeah, Bangaliers. That's Stephen King's other book. It's the sequel to Langoliers, the story where monsters come and vomit up time instead of eating it. But it was probably more like, here's your starting point, here's your ending point, and I'm going to tell you kind of where to go around, and maybe there's an explosion by you and you need to avoid that. I think that's kind of how it played out, which is, again, I think that's really fascinating. But when we were talking earlier about moral ambiguity, the reason I said that there's like a similar theme is I think even in that opening scene, once they're like securing the beach, there's two things that happen that I'm like, that shows you that even when you're on the side of right, you can do wrong. And it's those German soldiers that are coming out and they're surrendering and they're talking, and then they shoot them and they say, he said, "Look, I washed for dinner." Those guys weren't speaking German, they were speaking Czech. And they were saying, "Please don't shoot me. I'm not German. I am Czech. I didn't kill anyone. I am Czech." And so those are guys that were basically conscripted from the East and brought out. So they weren't even German, and then they killed them, and they were surrendering. And that shows like a brutal side of war. And then when they capture one of the nests and they fire out the flamethrower, and then the guys are like on fire, falling out of it, and then the guy says, "Let them burn."
Yeah,
that's crazy. And I'm positive stuff like that probably happened. But again, I'm in no way not saying that like we were right to do what we did. Maybe the way we went about it all the time wasn't perfect, but I don't know. It's like, does the end justify the means kind of a thing. Sorry. I feel like I'm getting a little too heavy. But the idea is that war is ambiguous. Like, it's mostly gray area. Even when you're in the right, you can do wrong. So I just think it's really... I think it's interesting he included that in there. Like, it could have just been like a rah-rah, almost like propaganda type thing. Like, look at the brave Americans. But he showed it really raw. And I think that's also why it resonates with people.
Steven Spielberg's been pretty good at that. He's done that a couple times. I know that he did it with Munich. You know, if you ever saw that. Yeah. It starts off as a very kind of seemingly righteous cause, and then at the end there was this kind of question of like, how far did we go too far? Why do we continue to do this? Will it ever end? You know, and so no, I appreciate that he does that, because it's, you know, you gotta. You know, I love America. I really do. But, you know, you got to be able to take everything about it, right? If you want to have an accurate picture. And so when it comes to moral ambiguity, like, yeah, I think it was right. They would to invade the beaches of Normandy. This is what the actions that were taken. And then along the way, you know, there were probably some savage things that were done. And then you just have to, that's just what it is. It's just humanity, you know, and that's the tragic, bittersweet nature of humanity, is that we destroy ourselves. And in the midst of war, there can be beautiful things that happen. We see the best of our humanity, but then there can also see the worst of our humanity as well. You know, that's just how it is.
There's two sides to every coin. But I was going to say, just as a piece of art, sorry, I'll just say this one last thing.
Finish your thought, Chris.
I'm finishing my thought. As a piece of art, just as an opening, it's a 30-minute scene, but it's not like they're sitting there having these big conversations. It tells you everything you need to know about the characters. You see Tom Sizemore's character put in the sand, and it says France on it, and you see that he has Italy and Africa in there. You see, is it Adam Goldberg? Is that his name?
Which one?
The Jewish soldier who's showing his Star of David and saying Juden. Like, you see everything you need to know about him. Like, and it shows him breaking down and crying. Yep. Like Captain Miller, Tom Hanks's character, is handshaking, but also the way he just leads his men and he does whatever he needs to. Mm-hmm. I think it just shows everything you need to know about the characters. It completely sets the tone, and he does it in like the most exciting way possible. My big takeaway is, it's like, I don't think anyone's ever going to top what he did. It's kind of a masterpiece. It's the Helm's Deep, the Battle of Helm's Deep of modern military filmmaking, I think so.
Whoa. That's saying something. It was Helm's Deep before Helm's Deep was Helm's Deep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I absolutely love this scene, and everything you said is absolutely true. And just speaking on the humanity thing, it's, you know, in my opinion, you know, humanity is a human construct. Like, it's completely invented based off morality and what we've deemed, you know, appropriate and how humans should act. And then war at its basic level is the most primitive act, you know. Like, we were born into war, essentially, from, like, the beginning times. You know, tribes literally killing each other for, you know, basic land, basic necessities, you know, resources. And then as we advance through time, then we start, giving war rules, and we start giving, humanity like morals and all this. So in my opinion, the most, brutal things, the most savage things that happen on a battlefield are the most human things. So I kind of take that 180 view on it. And then, it's some people want to wrap it up, put a bow on it, and call it,
Did you miss your deadline to renew your Medicaid coverage? You can still send your completed annual review form to Healthy Connections Medicaid. You may be assigned to another health plan, but you can ask to come back to First Choice within 60 days of renewed Medicaid eligibility. It's your family. It's your choice. First Choice is the right choice. Renew and choose us. Visit selecthealthofsc.com/renew to learn more.
Fargo, the new virtual assistant from Wells Fargo, makes banking faster and easier. Like this.
Fargo, what's my checking account routing number?
And this.
Fargo, turn off my debit card.
And this.
Fargo, what did I spend on groceries last month?
And that's just the beginning. Do you, Fargo? You can in the Wells Fargo mobile app. Learn more at wellsfargo.com/getfargo.
Terms and conditions apply. Your mobile carrier's availability and message and data rates may apply. Wells Fargo Bank, N.A., member FDIC.
Whether it's a problem or or whether it's savage, but to me it's like it's almost a beauty of war, because you're able to connect with the most basic level of survival within your person, within yourself, and you're able to commit such acts that nowadays we're like, yo, that's fucked up, or hey, that's completely wrong. But to me, it's the most human thing in the world. So it's a very interesting, it's an interesting argument, because let them burn, and it's like that's pretty fucked up. But then again, when you said Goldberg breaks down, he breaks down because he's handed a Hitler Youth knife, and he's realizing that he just murdered, like they just murdered children, and that's why he breaks down. But then the other side of the coin is all the captured German POWs. He's sitting there, almost mocking them, saying like, you didn't, like, look, a Jew is doing this to you. So it's like he keeps flip-flopping back between morality and, and then savagery. So it's like you said, this is literally a masterpiece. And, that I love this scene. It is such a good scene.
I was reading the shooting script when I was when I was preparing for this. Sorry, I had a brain fart. And it doesn't read anything like how the movie shot. The first scene, it's like Captain Miller's he's in the landing craft, and this one guy, like, he's nervous, and he grabs a guy by the face, and the guy's like, "Are we gonna die, Captain?" And he goes, "Nah, maybe 2/3." And he like lights he has a cigar, and he lights a match off the guy's helmet and then lights it. And I'm like, thank God they didn't do that. Like, I'm so glad they changed it, because I would have been like, this
Make
fucking
it a Western,
sucks.
like a gritty, yeah.
I mean, it read so cheesy, and it's like because that's not who Captain Miller is in the movie. And I'm like, I like how Captain Miller is in the movie. I think he's amazing. I think he's an amazing character. But anyway,
I don't think anybody, that participated in the Battle of Omaha Beach was like, okay, like they weren't like, this is going to be awesome. We're going to, a lot of people are going to die, but so what? I don't think anybody felt that. Just because, it is such, they knew what they were getting into. And as a leader, if you're in that mindset, because every leader has felt anxiety, every leader has been scared at one point. But all your troops are looking at you to set the example for what's going in, what they're about to get into. So, there's a really good example in I started watching the new SAS. What is it? What's the new SAS show? Is it Unsung Heroes? New SAS show. SAS Rogue Heroes. It's about the birth of the British SAS.
Nice.
And Alfie Allen plays one of the like first NCOs in the SAS, and he's like a hard charger. Like he walks through mortar fire and he walks through machine gun, and he's still, bullets are flying over his head, but he's calm, cool, and collected, and he's just making sure that the standard is there. And he appears to be this super like superhuman that is a warmonger and whatnot. But then there's a shot in like the first episode where they're like, all the men are in formation and he's like briefing them about what's going on. And there's literally mortars landing like 20 feet away from them. And like birds are like coming through and he's perfectly calm and collected. But then it shows a shot from behind him and his hand is shaking and he's like grabbing his hand and he's trying to appear in front of his men like he's not scared. So if they went with that like whole hard charger thing, it would have completely ruined that scene.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's, you know, as a leader, you have to set the example. Especially on a operation like that, because if everybody's scared, nothing's gonna get done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But cool, Chris, great deep dive. A lot of great conversation out of that one, huh?
Yeah.
You're probably thinking Cameron's done some fucking savage shit.
No, I'm just.
And the truth is, not as much as I'd like. But
you're like, they kept sending me home.
Yet,
yeah, I got fucking sending me home. I can't fucking pick my deployments. Got bullshit.
No ear necklace for you.
Yeah, no ear necklace for me, man. Cool. If you're willing, I have mine.
Yeah, let's dippity deep dive into your.
Let's do it.
Okay, I didn't have a way to end that sentence that was cool. So.
Deep dive into Operation Gothic Serpent, 1993, also known famously as Black Hawk Down. And this film came out in 2001. I thought it was actually super interesting because it was the first film that came out since the 9/11 attack.
Wow.
So, or at least first war/military film. So this one really, had a lot to not only offer in the entertainment value, but kind of, act as like a martyr for military forces going forth and kind of like to, rally support in a way. Because obviously war is nobody likes war. No one does. But, based off of propaganda, you need people on your side. So this one, I think, definitely was kind of a martyr in that aspect. But directed by Ridley Scott, based off a book written by Mark Bowden, who I kind of looked into a little bit because I originally thought Black Hawk Down was written by a ranger that was on the ground or a soldier that was on the ground, but it totally wasn't. Yeah, Mark Bowden's just an American journalist that kind of was looking for a war piece to write, but there wasn't really any major U.S. conflicts for a while. But this was the first one that presented itself and allowed him to write a book about it. But obviously did an excellent job in the book. It was, awarded a lot of different medals and, I guess, awards for whatever novel. But finally got made into a film, and not only made into a film, but one of the films that's, very close behind Saving Private Ryan in a realistic portrayal of warfare. The entire movie was given about like a $92 million budget, which was, it's a pretty big budget for a movie in 2001, and became a great success. So it definitely did what it was supposed to. It rang in about 172 million, so basically over doubled its or not over doubled because that would be 180,000, but definitely almost doubled its budget, which is great. But I think it's interesting, just the entire Operation Gothic Serpent. There's a lot about the battle that people don't know about, that they just see through, the eyes of Task Force Ranger, which is the main task force portrayed in the film. But one thing that people don't realize is the 10th Mountain Division was a huge part in Somalia during that time. Yeah, they were the other guys that were down there, and they got in a lot of different ticks with the Somali militiamen because, they were getting after it as well. So a lot of people just think like Somalia was all Rangers, Delta Force, and 160th, but no, 10th Mountain was there, and they were getting after it as well. So I always like to throw that in there because, big army puts in work too, not just all the special operations community. Yeah, give credit where credit's due. Absolutely, I have to give it to 10th Mountain. They were, they were there and they were getting after it. There's a couple of fun facts, but before we do, just to kind of highlight how much America kicks fucking ass. I mean, in a way, like after the battle was done, and the battle lasted around 18 hours. So it lasted around 18 hours. But in 18 hours of direct action combat, 18 Americans were killed. But for our 18 Americans, somewhere between 1,000 to 1,500 Somalians lay dead after 18 hours of fighting. Like that's a big number.
Yeah.
You know, that's a big number. And I think that's just a testament to how effective the U.S. military is.
I mean, that's almost like a 1 to 100 ratio.
Yeah, it's like one soldier taking out 100 guys. Yeah. Yeah, but I thought that was absolutely crazy statistic. But as far as some fun facts for the film, they call the derogatory term that they called the Somali fires or skinnies. And I always thought that was just after how they looked, you know, because they're malnourished. Like there's civil war going on in Somalia at the time. And one of the opening scenes is like a NATO truck or is it NATO or what fucking was it? Well,
UN.
just like UN, thank you. A UN truck coming in and like shoveling out rice, and everybody's there trying to get some food. So they're all malnourished because of the civil war occurring. So I thought that was why they called them skinnies. I didn't know this, and this was an awesome fun fact. But Task Force Ranger was a huge fan of, and when I say Task Force Ranger, a lot of the guys within that task force were huge fans of the novel Starship Troopers before it became a movie. And in Starship Troopers, the nickname Skinnies was described as the alien race that threatened to wipe out humanity. So they basically took that nickname and gave it to the Somalians. And I thought that was super awesome because when I was in Ranger Regiment, Starship Troopers was huge still to that day. Like the movie, all they did was quote, like all we did was quote it. I watched the movie way too many times. I also had a team leader that had an airborne infantry tattoo on his leg. So it's funny to see things don't fucking change even from the 90s to like 20 years later. But another fun fact was that the film was actually not shot in Somalia. It was actually shot in Morocco, and they used the Moroccan army to play the Somalia militiamen. But even though it wasn't shot in Morocco, a lot of the actual combat footage and like the ISR, and for those of you that don't know what ISR, it's, you know, intelligence basically gathered. It's like the eye in the sky. It's like that drone footage you see in a lot of videos. All that was taken from the actual battle. So like the scene when they're in the command post and they're seeing like all the overhead footage on the computer monitors, that footage is actually from the Battle of Somalia. That's from Gothic Serpent. Wow. So I thought that was super cool. I mean, there's a lot of small details within it that just went over my head. But not only were like the details really focused on, the responsibility that they put in the actors to, you know, positively portray the Rangers and the Delta Force guys and the 160th guys, they went to great lengths. And, you know, an example of that is the guys that were playing the Rangers underwent a 2-week training course before filming at Fort Benning, Georgia with 375. And then they sent the guys that were playing Delta Force to Fort Bragg to train with 7th Group for 2 weeks. And then I found this really cool, was that the 160th pilot in the movie, he's playing Michael Durant, which was played by Ron Eldard. He actually got sent to Fort Campbell, where he was lectured by real pilots and the real Michael Durant. Damn. So that's absolutely fucking nuts, because Michael Durant was captured. And I'm sure he could have, you know, I'm sure that dude has a wild story. I mean, the fact that he was captured and like not released for a long time and then finally got released was absolutely crazy. I'm sure that helped that actor a lot for the portrayal of that character. But another thing with the responsibility of the actors to really portray that story is at the end of the guys who were doing the Ranger training, they received an anonymous letter that was slipped underneath their door, and it was written and signed by the names of all the fallen Rangers that were, you know, that passed during Gothic Serpent, and it just read, "Tell our story." And so, you know, I'm sure from an actor's perspective, like that was extremely like sentimental, and that provided a lot of motivation to really take that job seriously and really tell that story. But yeah, Another thing that I found that was very interesting about Black Hawk Down was that the fast rope scenes, they were all 100% real. So none of it was CGI. The only thing CGI'd was the helicopter crashes, and I have another interesting fact about the helicopters that I'll get to. But the DoD was extremely involved in this movie. So they actually gave them a platoon from 3rd Ranger Battalion, along with pilots and birds from 160th SOAR. So the fast roping scenes in the movie are actual real Rangers doing fast roping. Wow. So it's not actors. So I thought that was super awesome. And the fun fact about the DoD is the fact they were not on board to begin with. So the movie actually didn't have it was like this close, and it's a podcast, so you can't see my fingers, but they're very close together. They almost didn't have Blackhawks for the entire movie because the DoD was like, I don't know if we want to give you guys real helicopters. So they almost had to get German helicopters, which looked nothing like Blackhawks, and it almost ruined the entire movie.
It's right there in the title.
I know, it's literally called Black Hawk Down. Like
German helicopter down.
German helicopters. Yeah, it's probably got like a cardboard box on the outside with like the Black Hawk painting. But after a month into filming, leading up to the raid, the DoD finally got on board and supplied them Blackhawks. So like, that's risky. That was so risky that they even like continued without permission to use Blackhawks, because like you said, Chris, it's in the title of the name.
I mean, it's right there. It was the title of the book. It'd be weird if it wasn't a Blackhawk.
Yeah, no, totally. It would ruin the entire.
They'd
probably
have
to scrap it.
Dare Black Hawk Down.
Yeah,
they're Black Hawk and Downs.
Das Black Hawks down. Yeah,
we just lost all our German listeners.
Or we just gained 500.
Exactly.
They're like, listen to these Americans. They don't know how to say the German word for Black Hawk, which is Gunfassflugel.
But to kind of finalize my deep dive here, just because obviously there's a lot of things about this movie that made that operation a pivotal moment in U.S. military history. Every year there's the Mogadishu Mile, and if you haven't heard of it, it's pretty much a mile run and some people do like a 5K, 10K, a marathon, but it commemorates the Operation Gothic Serpent. But it's actually had no, like, a lot of people think they, like, in the movie they run to a soccer stadium in like the open, and that was like the last thing to get to them to safety. But in actuality and in reality, that never happened. It actually, the soccer stadium was well over a mile away. They actually ended up.
Did you miss your deadline to renew your Medicaid coverage? You can still send your completed annual review form to Healthy Connections Medicaid. You may be assigned to another health plan, but you can ask to come back to First Choice within 60 days of renewed Medicaid eligibility. It's your family. It's your choice. First Choice is the right choice. Renew and choose us. Visit selecthealthofsc.com/renew to learn more.
Fargo, the new virtual assistant from Wells Fargo, makes banking faster and easier. Like this.
Fargo, what's my checking account routing number?
And this.
Fargo, turn off my debit card.
And this.
Fargo, what did I spend on groceries last month?
And that's just the beginning. Do you, Fargo? You can in the Wells Fargo mobile app. Learn more at wellsfargo.com/getfargo.
Terms and conditions apply. Your mobile carrier's availability and message and data rates may apply. Wells Fargo Bank, N.A., member FDIC.
The mile is the distance covered in the opposite direction that Rangers had to tactically move. So there was actually no running involved. It was all bounding and tactically moving from cover to cover to a specific rally point that had a lot of armored vehicles and tanks ready to extract people out. So that distance of a mile is the actual Mogadishu Mile. Not like in the movie where they're like running through the streets, not in cover and the guy's throwing up as they're running. That never actually happened. It's just the fact that they had to cover a mile worth of terrain to get to an extraction point that wasn't the soccer stadium at the time. So I thought, that's something interesting to know, especially because still bounding a mile is absolutely not fun.
Yeah, that just running a mile is one thing, but maneuvering constantly having that situational awareness under stress, being aware, moving with your body is like tense the entire time.
Yeah.
You probably don't even feel it until after you're done with and you realize how exhausted you are from being on.
Especially in like urban combat, right? Because like a lot of it is moving building to building. Like they do a great job of showing like the ranger training they received and all the special forces training. Because like when they're going from building to building, it's like they're bumping each other off. So like one dude's holding security while the other dude's running across, and the next guy comes, bumps him off, and he's running. So like it's not a fast process. So like a mile, you can run a mile in like 9 minutes jogging, like 10 minutes jogging, but to tactically move a mile, that takes a lot of time. So Black Hawk Down, in my opinion, is right up there in my favorite military movies and portrayals of real life combat with like Saving Private Ryan. So I'm glad you brought that up, Chris. But there was just, there's a lot about the movie that's super accurate and a lot of details that went into it that Ridley Scott did a great job about it. And then, so I'm glad they, took this book by Mark Bowden and, really did it justice. So that's my deep dive.
Nice, Cameron. That's good, man. I like this deep dive stuff. Like, you just for me, when it comes to the movies, you get to see anything. You get to see how much thought and how long the process was to get something that flashes before your eyes. And in the process of like 2 hours, I guess for Cameron's, half an hour for you. And then over the course of a couple hours of gameplay, it's wild, man. I like it.
No, it's absolutely crazy. But with that, we have a fan question, do we? And this fan question comes to us from Christian via our email, which is thepcfmpodcast@gmail.com. If you snap your fingers and automatically become an expert in one subject or area of knowledge, what would it be and why? This is a terrible question because it's going to require lots of time to think of it.
I already have an answer.
Hey, apparently it won't take a lot of time.
Yeah. If I could, I would know everything about human language. Meaning I would know how to speak every language and I just know everything about it. I think that would be like realistic. That's not like a superpower, but there's no place you couldn't go or nothing you couldn't do.
Yeah, because you know the language.
Yeah. You could blend in seamlessly. I'd become a spy. Or a billionaire.
Really
one of the two.
Chris. That's a very good answer, and I'm very upset because I want to use that answer. It's very good.
You could be, you could bring so much understanding to peoples from across the globe who, or you could help with academics like discovering old languages because you'd already be able to hear them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
What about you?
That's a good question, man. Let's see. Oh, brother, I would like to know. I guess would all areas of philosophy, like I would like to know every major tenet of philosophy from now all the way back into the beginning of history, like the ideas that have animated mankind, the things that have shaped people's thinking and influenced generation to generation, the things that our society was built on, Greek thought, Roman thought, the major philosophers. I'd like to have that in my brain, an understanding of that area, philosophy in my brain, because I feel like that would help me to understand people better. It would help me to, move in whatever kind of, to understand people and to, be able to build relationships, I feel like no matter what profession I had, it would come in handy, to be able to know where people are coming from, and I see the way that you're thinking, the way where you're coming from and your perspective, because that's based on this kind of philosophy, and then I can kind of, better communicate and try to get some understanding going. So,
yeah, these are really good answers.
Cam, what do you think in karate, kung fu?
What's that?
I said, Cam, what do you think in karate, kung fu?
All martial arts styles.
All martial arts styles. You know what?
Including Krav Maga.
Fuck it. Why not? I'll be an expert at every single martial art ever existed. Or I love to cook.
Yeah.
There you
No,
go.
I love it.
Yeah.
Go the other way. Yeah.
Yeah, let's go the other way, man. Yeah, or know everything about culinary art. That would be absolutely amazing because you could just be like, let me whip you up something from the fucking like this. 'Cause
Yeah.
cooking's great, man. That would be absolutely nuts. Because Chris took a really good one. You took a really good one. I'm gonna go sideways. Yeah, let's do culinary art.
Hey, no, I like that. That would
Like,
actually
he's
that's
such
pretty
a
amazing.
popular guy, Cameron.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
everybody likes to eat good cooking. Like
Everybody
it's such
loves.
a-
I
you
would
bring-
own multiple Michelin star restaurants, and like, not only would I be a successful businessman because my food is amazing, but also food is something that bonds people.
Mm-hmm.
And I've watched enough Travel Channel to know that that's a fucking awesome life. You know. So yeah, we'll go with that. We'll go with that. Food.
Nobody would dislike you, whether you're, the president of the United States, a warlord in Africa, the prime minister of Japan. Everybody loves good food. So you'd be the most sought after cook in all the world.
You'd be universally beloved.
Yep.
Perfect.
All right. There you go, Christian.
With that,
There you go. Hope that answered your question, Christian, huh?
so that brings us to what would now be our game. Do we have a game here?
We do have a game,
All right.
and I'm the
Chris
game
coming through
master.
with Games. All right.
You're the game master, huh?
Yeah.
Feel in good hands.
You're in great hands. The best. Really soft, supple hands here. Okay.
Moisturized.
And we're going to have some fun. This has nothing to do with the topic because I tried to think of a game that has to do with a deep dive and I couldn't think of one. So instead, this one's called What's My Line? And I'm going to say a line from a video game, TV show, or movie, and you just tell me what character said it. I think we've done this before, but hopefully I didn't pick the same quotes. Okay, and so the warm-up is get busy living or get busy dying. You're damn right.
Oh, man, I know this. We've done this before. I feel like we've heard this before.
Wait, say the quote again.
Get busy
we just have
living
to come up with a video game or money,
get
or a
busy
movie that
dying.
it's from.
You're damn right.
It's like right before they go on their last kind of push or whatever.
Oh, it's not from a war movie. It's just a very famous movie.
Yeah, I know, but I feel like it's right
Snakes
before
on a
the climactic
plane.
scene.
Cameron's so close, he doesn't even know it.
It's Sam Jackson. I feel like this is Sam Jackson would say this.
It's Red from Shawshank Redemption. It's Morgan Freeman.
Oh man.
Okay. I hope
did Sam
I hope the
Jackson
rest are
say it?
easier. No, it was Morgan Freeman.
Morgan Freeman. Oh, wrong man.
Yeah, that's okay. All right. And maybe I'll put on the voices a little bit so it's easier.
Thank you.
You want a war? I'll give you a war like you won't believe.
Oh, that was really good, Chris. I immediately knew what that was.
Do you? I don't.
No, he doesn't. He's being sarcastic and it hurts.
Extremely sarcastic. Extremely sarcastic.
Okay.
Apparently not sarcastic enough.
Can you give it to us one more time?
You want a war? I'll give you a war like you won't believe.
You want a war? I'll give you a war like you wouldn't believe.
Give you a war like you won't believe. Man.
I feel
I'm not
like
in
it's,
movie mode. I'm not.
No,
like,
you're
ready
not.
For this.
Well, it's
I'm
not all
emotionally
movies.
Prepared.
I feel like it was it's
Just throw something out there.
can I say a person who I think it is?
Sure.
It really sounds like
Samuel L. Jackson.
no. Even though that was my first pick. For some reason I feel like Bruce Willis would say something like this.
All right. He guesses Bruce Willis.
I mean, that's not a movie, but
Deep Blue Sea.
You think it's Samuel L. Jackson? It's John Rambo from First Blood.
Oh, man. Jeez.
Yeah.
That's now that you say it, it's obvious.
Oh, that's going to
I'm
happen
not
a
movie
lot.
mode at all.
It's going to happen a lot.
Man.
Okay. It's fun. We're having fun here. All right. Next one.
We are having fun. It's good. It's good. It's good. It's good.
It's good. We're all having fun. Okay. The healthy human mind doesn't wake up in the morning thinking this is its last day on Earth. But I think that's a luxury, not a curse. To know you're close to the end is kind of freedom. Good time to take inventory.
Golly.
I'll give you a hint. It's a video game.
Oh.
Oh.
Wow. Very, very deep video game. Can you say it one more time?
The healthy human mind doesn't wake up in the morning thinking this is its last day on Earth. But I think that's a luxury, not a curse. To know you're close to the end is a kind of freedom. Good time to take inventory.
I'm just going to take a stab in the dark and say Halo.
That is a stab in the dark. For some reason, I want to say like Assassin's Creed.
It's Captain Price in Call of Duty.
You know what? My first guess was Call of Duty Black Ops. 'Cause it sounds like something you would tell like the guy in the chair, like Makarov in the chair.
Mason, tell us about the numbers, Mason.
Mason.
What are the numbers made?
Okay. You guys are doing great.
Thanks. 0 for 3. 0 for 3, but I'm feeling
This
good
might
today,
be our
so that's
first
okay.
clean
Nothing's
sweep.
going to bring me down.
Okay. Good, bad. I'm the guy with the gun.
Oh, that's an easy one. I got this. Cameron, you got any guesses? I know what it is.
Look how quickly he's
By all
cocky
means.
again.
By all means.
That is Ash from Army of Darkness.
That's correct.
You're a
Because he's
little
like,
goody
I'm
two-shoes."
bad, Ash. You're a good Ash, little goody two shoes. All right, good job. There we go.
Blows them
See?
away.
It's one on the board.
One on the board.
Thank gosh. No clean sweep today.
Yeah, no.
Here we go. I am not in danger. I am the danger.
Ooh. Ooh, I think I know this one. Because I've heard this a lot. It like comes up in like YouTube shorts. This particular scene.
I can see it.
Cameron,
It's
you
kind
got
of
any guesses?
it's memeable.
Yeah, it is memeable.
It's memeable.
So is the line that follows.
I am danger. Huh. No, I don't got any guesses.
Okay. I think this is right before the iconic line, I am the one who knocks. It's Walter White from Breaking Bad.
That is correct.
Hey.
Nice,
you go.
Izzy. Nice, Izzy.
All right, I'm on
cranking
top of
these
the
out.
world.
I'm so
Nothing
glad
can
I'm on
stop
your
me
team.
now. I'm
All
king
right.
of the world.
This next one is also from video game. Some trees flourish, others die. Some cattle grow strong, others are taken by wolves. Some men are born rich enough and dumb enough to enjoy their lives. Ain't nothing fair.
Is this from like Red Dead Redemption?
That sounds like Red Dead Redemption 2, yeah.
Who do you think said it? I'll give you full points for knowing it's Red Dead Redemption, but who said it?
Gotta have faith. Something has a plan. He has a plan. He's always got a plan. I can't remember his name.
I've never played Red Dead Redemption. It just the fact
played it
that
on
it sounded like an
stream.
old Western guy.
Yeah, it
made me guess
ain't
that.
nothing fair.
Yeah,
is
ain't
the
nothing
giveaway.
fair.
Ain't nothing fair. It's John Marston.
Marston. Oh, okay. Not the guy I was thinking of. John Marston. Okay.
Well, there we go.
Good one. Very emotional. Red
Yeah.
Dead Redemption 2. I've never played the first one. But...
Oh, well. I'm sorry. Next time I'll pick the second one. Okay. This is the last one. Dead or alive, you're coming with me.
I got this one. Cameron, you know what it is? It's an old one.
Don't think too hard, Cameron, because
Terminator, right?
Ooh,
The wrong Arnie one.
that wasn't Arnold. I would have been like, dead or alive, you're coming with me.
He's not the clone.
I actually did the voice a little bit. I think that's what helped Izzy.
Yeah. You know, he directed the episode of The Last Ship that I was in.
So you
He's
met
actually,
him.
Yeah, he's actually a professor. I didn't meet him. He was like over there, 10 feet away, directing us. But it's RoboCop. It's Peter Weller from RoboCop.
RoboCop.
Dead or
Okay.
alive, you're coming
Right.
with me.
Great movie. Great film.
Stay out of trouble.
That's it. That's the game.
Hey,
Well,
good one, Chris. Nice
I
walk
mean,
down
at least it
memory lane.
wasn't a clean sweep, you know.
Yes, we
No.
kind of picked it up a little bit towards the end.
You know what, though?
Yeah.
But now that you mention it, I don't think there's ever been a clean sweep. I don't think there's ever been one where I just roasted you guys. So maybe that'll be in an upcoming episode sometime.
That was, but
Maybe.
there was one where I think I only got
It was
one
like the
right.
Star Wars episode.
Yeah,
I
it
think.
was like
Yeah,
the-
it's
it
burned
was
in my
like-
memory because I'm like, as long as I don't do as bad as that
Scarred.
ever again. But honestly, it would have been a clean sweep. I would have gotten one right if I was just by myself. So,
Yeah.
so I would have done that bad. But thank God Izzy was here.
Yeah. I think it's the few of those were before you were born, so I guess
That's no
It's okay.
excuse.
I've still seen them all.
That's right. You gotta
so
see it. Yeah, that's right.
I've still seen them. You know what? I watch movies. Is he okay?
You watch more movies than I do, so I might have
I do.
to-
I haven't watched a movie in a long time though. It's been like 3 weeks since I've watched them. Actually, that's a lie. I watched a movie on the airplane back. So I'm just a dirty liar.
I'm just proud I've been keeping up with the Last of Us TV show. I'm one episode behind.
Are you? Oh, one just came out today.
Yesterday, yeah.
And with Bill, apparently, of all the internet memes I've seen.
Yeah, they're really cutting through the video game storyline very quickly, so it'll be interesting to see how they wrap up the season, if they're going to get to Abby and the last events from the second game already. But anyway, a discussion for another time. Perhaps another deep dive into the series. But that's going to do it, folks. That is our episode. We appreciate you joining us. I mean, gosh, that's it. We'll see you on the next one.
Yeah, cue music. Let's get out of here.
What's going on, everybody? You just listened to the free version of the PCFM podcast. If you want full-length versions of podcast episodes, plus much, much more, head on over to our Patreon page at patreon.com/PCFM podcast.
That is right, Israel. If you want access to this full episode, you have to subscribe to the Fuzzy Private tier, which is our cheapest tier on Patreon at $5 a month. But if you are interested in a little bit more, we also have the Salty Sergeant tier at $8 a month and the Lifer tier at $12 a month. So hopefully we will see you there, PCFM family. Cue music.